Welcome to my live stream number 16, live streaming writing and dictation of my novels. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm currently writing this next novel, Island Dawn on Maui, under my pen name, Aaron Belsing. You can find it at aaronbelsing.com. This is one of the Write With Me sessions where I actually dictate using my microphone and, well, my iPad. Let me show you voice to text or voice memos here. I just use my iPad to do the recording. I just copy the text out of the voice app built into the phone, edit it, and have the next book. So I'm working on chapter number 10 of Island Dawn or on Maui. Sorry, a little late night working on some editing there. So in this chapter, I've got the female main character, Mara Yanez, and the main male character, Dean Benton. I've got my character list here. They've gone through the property, but they haven't gone through the house very much, and that's a big thing. This is a trope of unexpected inheritance, forced proximity, island vacation, and a getaway romance. So those are the tropes that I'm using in this book. And it's pretty fun so far. I've got 9 chapters, knocking out pretty well. Yesterday I got something like 8,000 words in, so I'm rocking it. So, I'm ready to get going on chapter number 10 here. Let's see, here we go. I'll fire this off. Okay. And hopefully, is the stream key right? Oh, let's see. One moment, checking to make sure everything's working. Yes, perfect. Okay, good. All right, let's get started. I'm going to get this done. I got a lot of writing to get done today and get some editing. I've got Moonlight at Wailea. Hopefully I finish the editing today and then launch that off to you so you can enjoy the experience of that book. Just making sure the live stream's working. Got somebody reporting there's issues, no issues. Perfect. Okay, good. All right, let's get to it here. Chapter 10. Okay. Recording. Island Dawn on Maui, Chapter 10. All right. The next day, Dean and Mara met in the morning to go through more of the house. They decided to wrap it up the previous night before getting into the emotional content of the house. And Dean saw that Mara was having struggles, so he decided last night to say, hey, let's break for dinner and then we'll get into this tomorrow. It's pretty late. She agreed and they went out and enjoyed a dinner in town. Find the restaurant that they need to go to, mental note. And now in the morning, Dean showed up and he's got his clipboard, his pickup, and he's got his phone and iPad ready. As Mara rolls up over the rough road, she hops out and says, tells Dean, looks at him, we really need to get that road fixed. That is a jawbreaker. He looks at her, good morning to you too. She looks at him harshly and says, you don't think the road's that important? He said, no, not, no offense, but not when the house is falling down. I found a couple issues that we really need to work on before we can even decide what to do with this. As Mara walked up the chipped up paint steps, she put her hand on the handrail and a paint chip came off that, and then she looked at the white dust under her hand. And Dean shook his head and said, this place is going to need a lot of work. The low-slung house with the the wide roof was a classic Hawaiian plantation home. It had been home to Mara's uncle, Glenn Rollins, for 20 years. And here they were, after meeting with a lawyer and realizing that they were somehow unexpectedly locked together, they needed to work together. Mara sat down on the porch and said, I used to do this with my uncle. We would sit here and we'd have sandwiches and enjoy the scenery, just watching the palm trees and the fronds sway in the wind. Dean sat down next to her, close enough to be comfortable, but not so close enough to be awkward after having hardly known her. He reached over and grasped her shoulder and massaged it for a moment. She didn't resist. She closed her eyes and thought about the experience with her uncle and what it was like. After a moment of rubbing her shoulder, Dean picked up his iPad and said, all right, unfortunately, it's down to business. Are you ready to do this? I've already started a professional inspection, and there's several things that we need to solve before we even consider what we're going to do with the property. What do you mean consider what to do with the property? Aren't we going to just sell it? I mean, this place is a mess. Dean paused for a moment, letting Mara calm down after what he said. He continued, well, here's the problem. Even though the place isn't a disaster, it's got several substantial issues and 1,000 little maintenance items, and those are the things that kill a sale. What do you mean we can't just get a buyer going on this? I mean, this is Hawaii. It should be pretty easy to sell. Dean shook his head and he said, no, unfortunately it's more complex. This is possibly a historic property. People automatically shy away from that because of the difficulties with the county of Maui. Difficulties? Mara looked at him. Yes, if a property is actually deemed historical, there's all sorts of rules we have to follow, and it becomes much more complicated. Mara put her elbows on her knees and put her face into her head, shaking it. Her long brown straight hair swished back and forth over her shoulders. Her muffled voice came through her hands. I had no idea. I mean, the last time I visited here, it didn't look this bad. Dean thought for a moment and then said, it's surprising. When you're visiting family, you don't see a lot of problems. And I'm not discounting your thoughts, but I've experienced this myself. Really? She asked. Exactly how many of these historic homes have you done? Is this even your thing? And Dean said, yes, in fact, this is exactly one of the things I do at my firm. We bring homes back to life. I've got one in San Diego going right now. Oh, you do have one in San Diego? Yes, it's up by Balboa Park, near Golden Hills. It's a beautiful property, a great view, but boy, it's going to need some hammer swinging. Mara looked up, touched the hand railing, chipped off another couple pieces of paint, and picked at the wood and said, yeah, hammer swinging, that would probably be a light-duty explanation. Dean said, maybe. There's the roof damage on the back. Roof damage? Like, what kind of roof damage? Do you remember you said you saw a blue piece of plastic up on the roof? Yes, I did. Let's go take a look. They both stood up and walked around to the back of the property, back to the house, and then Dean coaxed her to walk farther away and then said, turn around and look. Mara spun on her heel, looked up, and her mouth opened as she stared at a large blue tarp covering the roof. How much damage are you talking about? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what Glenn was doing, but it could be substantial. It could just be a couple shingles lost. Until we get up there and get this off, I don't know, but we got to take care of that really quick. And why would that be? I mean, it's been up here probably for a while, it looks like. Well, I don't know if you've checked the weather, Dean continued, but there's going to be a storm coming through in a couple days according to the weather forecast. Oh, like how much of a storm? Oops. I don't know, but they say it's a pretty heavy tropical storm. There hasn't been a really strong storm in a long time, and we need to make sure this is all taken care of. Mara looked around the space, looked at the house, looked at the ground under her feet, and said, I don't think we're going to get this done in 2 or 3 days or whenever this storm's going to come in. At that, Dean chuckled and said, oh, no, definitely not, but the roof is everything. If that storm tears off more shingles, the cost is going to get really steep, so that's something we have to take care of immediately. How are we going to do that? Oh, a ladder and walking up, and definitely could use your help. Sure thing. I've climbed around like a monkey when I was a little girl. I feel pretty confident. Okay, let's go do that before we get to the interior of the house. So they walked over to the the storage shed where all the tools were kept. Dean pulled out the key and unlocked the door and smiled and mentioned to Mara, I'm glad Glenn just kept one key, otherwise there's so many properties here, it'd be like a jail managing this. Mara thought about it and said, you're right, I guess I never thought about how many different places need a key. They pulled out a long fiberglass ladder and walked over to the roof and rested it against it. And they said, I'll hold it for you, you go up to the roof, and then you hold it for me as I come up, okay? All right, sure thing. Dean stood to the side and held the ladder, and Mara climbed up the ladder as though she was just climbing a set of stairs. As soon as she alighted onto the roof, Dean looked up with wide eyes, and she glanced down. So, you coming or what? What'd you think? I didn't know how to climb a ladder? Dean shrugged, and in his jeans and work shirt, let's see, set down the iPad. He set down his kit. No. He slung his bag over his shoulder and climbed up the ladder, hopped off, and stood next to her. They walked over to the tarp, and he said, well, moment of truth, they've only got ropes and rocks holding this. He untied one side and Mara untied the other, and they slowly walked it back, unsure of what they were going to see. As soon as they turned around and looked down, they saw that in fact several shingles had been damaged and torn off, probably in a windstorm. Dean said, probably in a windstorm. Does it really get that windy here? I never remember it being this bad. Oh yeah, Hawaii, has had hurricanes, tropical cyclones. It can get pretty crazy out here. But it hasn't happened in a while. Dean shook his head. No, definitely not. As they stood there, they felt the warm ocean breeze, the salty spray slowly misting off the breakers in the ocean, and Mara smelled it. She breathed in and breathed out, and she said, hey, how come I feel like I'm getting wet up here? And Dean said, oh, you'd be surprised when the shore breakers are bigger like there are now. That salt spray floats up in the air and it goes a long way inland. Mara thought for a moment, and is that why everything's got this little crust of white on it? He nodded and said, yep, absolutely. Well, what are we going to do about the roof? Dean looked at it thoughtfully and completely pulled the tarp back with Mara. And he said, this actually isn't too bad. Some of the other buildings I noticed more shingles torn off, but this we could get down to the store and get repaired immediately. We don't even have to wait for a contractor. We could actually do this. We can? Sure, all we got to do is get an 80-pound bag of shingles up here. 80 pounds? Mara exclaimed. I mean, I work out, but I can't lift 80 pounds. And Dean thought about it for a moment and said, true, that's not something I like to do either, but we can just take a couple of individual shingles up here and start working on it. I've got tools that I can get a hold of and we could get the repair done. Is there anything else we should look at, like that paint chipping or the wood? He shook his head and said, no, if we don't get this roof repaired, this is a big deal. They both stood on the eagle's perch at the apex of the roof, looking over the landscape. And Dean mentioned, you actually get a great view of the property. This gives me a much better sense of the space. Mara thought about it for a moment and agreed. You're right. I guess I never thought about it. My uncle never took me up to the apex of the roof. It's kind of dangerous up here. Yes, Dean continued, it definitely has its risks. Fortunately, the shingles are in decent shape, so we don't need a re-roof. That'll cost a pretty penny. But what a beautiful view, isn't it? This is an incredible property. Mara agreed. It is. I have some great childhood memories. There's a little spit of a peninsula down there. I mean, I always imagine having a wedding here or something. It's just Trevor and I couldn't. And she paused, tilting her head down. It's a little expensive to do the destination wedding. Dean looked at her. Yes, we had big dreams. Well, anyway. She looked away for a long moment. Well, let's get the tarp back on, and I think that's probably the number one problem we need to solve. Everything else, I think we can work through. I don't know about the other buildings, but if that storm is as strong as they say it is, I don't want any more damage. They agreed and put the tarp back down and locked it down, and 10 minutes later they were down off the roof and the ladder was away. As they walked through the house, they walked back to the porch and then went into the house. They strolled around and Mara explained the different rooms, including the one she stayed in. There was one door that was closed and they walked past it twice. And finally Dean asked, whose room is that? Oh, that's my mom's room. That was almost a shrine for my uncle. He really cared about my mom. I bet. Is it okay if we look in there? She breathed in and breathed out, and her temples throbbing in the space, and she said, no, is it okay if we just wait for a little bit? Sure thing. I mean, this isn't going anywhere, but we should look in there just to make sure there's no problems that could cause us trouble later. She rolled her shoulders back and then reached out and clicked the knob and then opened it. The hinges creaked as the white wood panel door swung open. They looked inside and they saw a whitewashed dresser, a double bed with steel rails, painted steel rails, and a comforter, and a pile of clothes in the corner. And Mara glanced around. That's it? That's all that's left of the room? Why? He asked. There was photos on the wall. There's pictures. I wonder where they ended up. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find everything eventually. Glenn wasn't a guy to throw stuff away. He wasn't a hoarder, but he didn't ruin family stuff. Mara walked over and sat on the bed for a moment. She heard the steel creak as she bounced up and down and then stood back up. Well, if you say we need to fix that roof and then we need to get some things going here. He said, yes, I do know a contractor that can help us get that. His name is Wes Foster and he's really good. All right, do we call him or what do we do? I'll call him. Let's go get the supplies from the hardware store and we'll get a bag of shingles and then we'll get back here and get things going, okay? Mara agreed and they walked out of the house and Dean locked it. And then they stood on the porch looking, feeling the breeze and hearing the tropical birds chirp and fly around. Mara wondered at the birds and finally said, this really is a beautiful place. I mean, I want to sell it because I need the money, but I hate to get rid of it. Dean stared at the handrails, the decking, the wood on the fascia, and thought about for a moment what it would take to make the home livable, functional, and even usable again. You know, Mara, let's talk about that. If we get an appraisal, and I bet it's going to come in way under market, we're going to leave a lot of money on the table. I don't want to do that. That would be dumb, wouldn't it? I've never bought or sold a home. Dean leaned over and said, and whispered, I've done this a lot. Trust me, it's work, but when you put the work in, it pays off. Mara walked up and grabbed the handrail, picked up her hand, saw the white chalky powder, and brushed her hand off and said, well, let's not leave money on the table, shall we? They walked down the stairs and headed for their vehicles. Boom. Perfect. That was chapter 10 of Island Dawn on Maui. Let me get the transcript. I'll put it in my software and see how we did for the word count. All right, one moment, please. Thank you very much for watching while I'm working on this. Let's see if I can get the text select to work here. Okay. Copy there. Go to good old Scrivener. Sync later. Glacier Tomb. Moonlight, Wailea. Great. One moment. I don't want to mess up my project. Dropbox test. Okay, and that was 2,727 words. There you go. There you can see the 2,721 words, and I will show you in the voice memos. That is the transcription immediately built in to the. If you have an iPhone, that's built into the iPad, the phone, everything. Once I discovered that, I type my books, but oh my gosh! And by the way, I've been reading Jude Devereaux's Moonlight in the morning. It's a beautiful book. It's based in her Virginia series in town. I think it's pronounced Edlean. This is actually one of my mom's books, and she passed away fairly recently, and I'm trying to get to know her even better, reading some of her romance books. And I gotta say, actually, I really enjoy not only writing romance, but I secretly enjoy reading romance too. The books are really good. This is way back when, but it's a good time. Thank you very much for watching. Again, this was episode number 16 of Write With Me, where I work on my books. And then this episode in particular was Island Dawn on Maui. Please check out links below to my romance pen name website, aaronbelsing.com. And you can get the free book, Moonlight at Wailea. And then also you can go to my main author website, Aaron R. Linsdau, where you can get all these different books available. And Black Ice is actually free as well, so you can get a taste of some of my thrillers. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.